Hey, how's it, everybody? Welcome back to FANatics. My name is Alex, your host today, and as always, my awesome colleagues dressed in all black are attending this week. We have Sholin and Tiego. We're going to unpack some issues of freedom this week with you guys. So to kick things off, we've got a story that comes out of Gauteng, and this is about your freedom to play, and of course, when it comes to these kind of political stories, there's a whole lot more to unpack. Now, this is a pretty crazy story, as we tend to delve into on Freedom Fanatics, and this is from News 24, and this story is titled "The Cost of Demolishing Mamelodi's Dilapidated HMBJ Stadium Balloons to 84 million rand," and that is according to the DA. So now, I'm just going to share some stories, photos rather, of the stadium that come from the article, and this is said stadium that is being demolished. Of course, it is run down. It's not suitable for any sort of sporting activities, and so yeah. But what is interesting is that the stadium has been earmarked to be demolished, but already the stadium infrastructure has been stripped bare, and steel bleachers, I'm not quoting from the article directly, have been dismantled. The demolition of the concrete stands and rubble removal cannot cost the millions that the department has estimated. So that's the first little bit of this. I mean, Sholin, we've spoken a lot about your freedom to play, and the essential nature of having facilities for people to work in. What are your sort of first thoughts when you came across the story?
Yeah, when I read it, I immediately just thought that 84 million rand just to destroy a stadium, it's stupid and it's such a waste of money. Those were my first immediate thoughts. Because I mean, with that amount of money, more sports facilities could have been created. I mean, the soccer field itself, the Mamelodi Stadium, could have been developed even better. Even more soccer fields could have been created with that. More teams could have actually been funded with that in the community. But instead, once again, we find ourselves in a situation where the ANC are against us destroying instead of building. And my most important question is, who in Gauteng is going to be benefiting from that 84 million rand that it costs to destroy the stadium? Because I want to know, who's the tender going to? Who's going to get the contract for destroying a valuable sporting facility? And I also think another important topic, like issue that should also be discussed, is also just in general, Alex. I know you are a soccer fan yourself, but like attendance at many PSL games have been struggling a lot. Um, um, Especially over like the last few years, where people have not really been showing up to soccer games unless it is massive matches. So I also understand that getting sustainable funds in to actually keep up these stadiums running is difficult, but I still think that's no excuse for destroying a facility that has been like a historic site for such an important team in South Africa.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is the former home ground of Mamelodi Sundowns, who, if I'm not mistaken, are at the top of the PSL at the moment. And I think, but to add on, just Sholin, you say, where's this money going? This 85 million is the estimated demolition cost, which has been inflated, and this is why it's been flagged. But it is originally earmarked to cost 69 million. So even now, where again, even though the story itself is quite sad, to add insult to injury, we're inflating the costs to get rid of it. But Tiego, there's one thing that really struck me in this piece, and that was that the piece goes on to mention that they are adjusting the budget in order to do this. Now, the article says that according to the department's adjusted budget for the 2021-2022 financial year, 400,000 rand has been shifted from Program 3 to cater for the demolition of the stadium. Now, Program 3 is a is responsible for the libraries and archival services, which means that our children will continue to suffer without the necessary reading materials. So I'm going to let you go ahead.
It sounds like the ANC. It very much sounds like the ANC government. Let me assure you right now, inside that 84 million rand, you'll find that there is money for a certain politician. There is money for friends and family members of a certain politician, administrators at the very department that's handling the matter, the admin people themselves, permanent employees of the department have added their small share inside it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a mess. It's what's happening everywhere in the country, really. You find departments when there are events at departments and catering is needed. Cold drink that you would normally buy for around 12 rand being sold to a department for around 35 rand or for around 30 rand. Everything is being inflated just so comrades, friends of comrades, the ANC can chow. It's nonsensical. It doesn't make logical sense that the government is going to spend so much to demolish the stadium and put a fence around it. We could, like Sholin has already said, build even 2 stadiums out of that money. But more than anything, this is the ANC. There's really nothing shocking. For me, when I read the article, I was just wondering, my only question was, how much extra did they add? Because one thing for sure is that they always add. They are constantly adding every time there's a tender. It doesn't matter at what level, whether they are building a national road, whether they are building a stadium, or whether it's just small catering for 10 people, stay rest assured that they are going to add extra money that will benefit their friends, that will benefit them, that will benefit the ANC as an organization. Now we are moving ahead. 2024 is just around the corner, and we're going to see a lot of such stories because the ANC currently doesn't have money. They don't have enough money to pay their own workers. Such things are going to happen. We are going to see a whole lot of projects taking place. I mean, just before local government elections, we saw almost in every part of South Africa, roads being fixed, potholes and everything. It wasn't just about delivering services towards elections so people could vote for them. It was also about them generating money for their election machine. Now, the ANC Congress is coming up in December. We must expect more of these things. That Congress must be funded by someone. And this is an organization of thugs. Stay rest assured, we are going to fund that Congress. Tenders, everything is going to happen like this for the rest of this year. We are going to fund that Congress. There's nothing unusual here. It's their normal practice. They are corrupt to the very core.
Tiego, if I can add real quick, Alex, that's an important point Tiego raised about the fact that since the ANC know that the end is coming, they will be trying to milk the state money as much as they possibly can because it will probably be their last opportunity to do so. And I just think it speaks to the fact that an animal is most dangerous when it's busy dying because then it's on guard, it's know its end is coming and it's trying to protect what resources it has left as much as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's a classic case, but I think this story really does illuminate when we speak about, policy proposals such as school vouchers. It really is taking money out of the hands of politicians and giving it to communities. And I think this really shows, here they're taking, not only are they, I think to understand the process of tenders and irregular expenditure is very straightforward. And we understand that, but at least we know that there are ideas out there that can work around this. Now, this relates to a stadium, but it can be easily applied to another system because now that 400,000 rand that's being taken away from the library services, and literally last week we spoke about libraries in the Eastern Cape that have been ransacked, and this is really just one way. A voucher system is one way that we can ensure accountability and service delivery for communities across the country. Now, what I would just want to touch on, just to sort of just link the story back to some other examples, was that last year there was the case of the Lesotho sports field in the Enoch and Gijima municipality in the Eastern Cape. Now, I actually just saw now that the municipality itself has just gone under administration together with Mangaung. But this stadium cost 15 million rand. It was originally budgeted at 22. They only spent 7, and now 8 million's gone absolutely nowhere. You don't know where it is. But really, this is small fry. It's a much bigger problem. And I think it speaks for itself. But there's nothing new there. I think what you must remember is that there are policy solutions out there that can enhance accountability. So the last thing before we just move on to our last story is I just want to flight this video I'm actually going to scrub through a little bit than what I initially intended. And this story from the Eastern Cape was flagged last year, October. But I'm just going to share a video for a few seconds on what it looks like now. So, this is the grand unveiling. Now, obviously, this is the end of the spectrum. The other story talks about demolition. This talks supposedly about building. So let's just have a watch. This is taken. This is about two weeks ago. So let's see what this stadium currently on screen now looks like.
Well, in August of last year, pictures of the now infamous Leicester sports facility in the Eastern Cape went viral. Our team had visited the stadium with its inflated 50 million rand price tag, and now a preliminary report has concluded that the procurement process and the awarding of the tender was marred by numerous irregularities. Our senior reporter, that's Avio Mdila, is at the stadium. He joins me now. Avio, good morning to you, a colleague. When you brought the story to ENCA, it's one that, of course, blew the country into shockwave. It did not look like a stadium that equated to the amount spent, and now we do have confirmation that there was irregular expenditure there.
Certainly, Tumela, we're back at the 15 million rand Leicester sports facility at the Enoch Mgijima local municipality in Queenstown. And you remember the shocking visuals that we brought you of what 15 million rand is supposed to look like. I'm going to ask my brilliant colleague Ngaban Tlanganiso to show you once more how it looks since October last year, since we've been here. You remember there were even lines.
That's cool. Yeah, I think we generally get the points. But I think the one thing just to sort of bear in mind, and Tiego has touched on this, is corruption is a symptom, not necessarily the problem. And let's bear that in mind. Think about that when you head to the polls, and or if you don't head to the polls, hopefully this kind of thing can actually encourage you to do just that. So, guys, just heading on to our second story for today. Very different, but again, we're touching on what the impact is of bad government decision making. Now, 7 rand for a pack of cigarettes. The story comes from the Citizen. Authorities are losing the fight against illegal cigarettes. Who could have thought this would happen after banning legal substance during the lockdown? Tiego, what are your thoughts?
I think 2 issues are at play here. Issue number 1 is that our taxes are simply high as a country, like I always mention, right? And as a result of that, obviously cigarettes and other products become more expensive. Mm-hmm. Now, what happened when cigarettes were banned by Minister Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma and the Ramaphosa cabinet was that illegal cigarettes started to be sold quite openly in the country. I mean, illegal cigarettes have always been sold. You go to your spaza shops in townships, you go to your spaza shops in rural areas. Illegal cigarettes have always been there, but they haven't always been popular. But now with what happened in 2020, the lockdown, people then began to realize that, hey, actually, this is a cigarette and it's smokable and it's cheaper. And a lot of people are now buying those illegal cigarettes. I have such a friend in Grahamstown who never used to smoke these illegal cigarettes, but he now smokes the illegal cigarettes because 1, they are easily accessible to him. He stays in the location. They are always around. 2, they are quite cheap because they are not even being taxed. So I think lockdowns have caused many problems for us, and this is one of the problems that they have caused for us. But high taxes as well are really allowing for this thing to continue, because those products that are being sold legally are being taxed with high taxes. The prices have become too high. People end up going for the illegal ones that are cheaper. So in part of how we could deal with the matter, I think, is that, of course, in terms of the policing the whole cigarette industry, we could improve at that, but taxes as well. I mean, it's not surprising that it's no surprise at all, sorry, that the cigarettes are selling like hot buns. They are quite cheap. And in the economy that we are in, people can afford this and will end up buying this. So perhaps we should really start looking at this thing of high taxes that are causing prices of products to be too high. People end up doing this. Criminality ends up excelling in a country when people can no longer afford products because the government keeps on interfering and increasing taxes for no reason.
I think Sholin, the one thing here is that the problem is that the tax, as we see with the previous story, is that the tax that's being used isn't going to where it should be, and therefore it creates this resentment from the populace that, you know, the money is, tax is fine if it's getting used to help the people who paid it in the first place. And obviously in South Africa, we've got a very small tax base that ultimately supports the country. But I think, you know, at play here, like Tiego mentions, is that when you have black market products freely, not freely available, but much cheaper, undercutting the legal market, you know, 75% youth unemployment, you know, no one's going to go and spend whatever 25, 35 rand for a box of cigarettes when you can get it at a quarter of the price. But I think, you know, at play here really is just a lack of an accountable government. Yes. Surely, you know, is that something people should be? How can, you know, when you try and we speak about a lot about Empower, Build, Connect, how can we think about this kind of issue? How can people react to it to try and ensure that there is essentially accountability, tax justice, when it seems like everything is kind of crumbling around us?
Yeah, firstly, when government policy, like, you know, like the lockdowns and things like heavy tax burden, make it so that people to honorably trade in the free market, they are bound to turn away from that and pursue illegal means of making ends meet. That's the unfortunate truth. And now people even sell these products so cheaply just so that they don't pay tax. And in my opinion, that's a complete own goal for the government, because the government are dependent on the taxes that we pay. And if you make it so high, people cannot pay it, and therefore the government cannot fully be funded, which is an own goal in every sense of the word.
I guess it's only an own goal if they're not themselves directing from these illegal sales, right? But I'm not just saying.
And that's and what we should actually do is we should actually be keeping them accountable by the most powerful way ever, which is through a vote. Because if the people you put into power, the people you elect to parliament, those are the people who vote for taxes to rise or go down. And they actually vote for policies that impact things like inflation. You know, when you make it difficult and when you are when the free market is so heavily regulated, obviously taxes will have to rise. Prices of goods will inflate, unfortunately. That's why the simple thing is you actually just need to empower the individuals who make the proper policy decisions in our government, and who actually have the power to do so because of their position. That's the most important way I think we can keep them accountable.
I think it's certainly the most important, but it's certainly not the only way. Obviously, I think it's important to be on guard, you know, watch what civil society is doing. You know, if you don't push back against bad ideas, then you allow them to flourish. And so I think being, you know, if politically you don't want to be involved, if you're not so keen on the ballot box, you know, look at other methods of making your voice heard, support organizations that do that. FAN is fighting for your freedom. We've got campaigns for your freedom to play, to earn, and to lead. So if ever you feel disempowered, turn to us, drop us a note, slide into our DMs at Badger of Liberty, and we will see what we can do. Even if it is, for now, talking about it, making you guys apparent, but there's a lot going on behind the scenes to make sure that your freedom is fought for. So I think we're going to leave it over there. But I think before we wrap up, I might end off with a little video. But Tiego, you're upstaging us with your outfit today. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about it? You know, in the conception of a classical liberal, I don't think John Milton and those sort of guys would have envisioned your regalia.
Of course. Well, outside the work I do at FAN and outside being politically active, I happen to be a traditional healer, and that's why you see me today dressed in the stuff that I'm dressed with. This is not just an outfit, by the way. There are herbs that are inside the stuff, herbs for protecting, herbs for helping me connect with energy and everything. But I must agree with you that it's not a normal thing to bump into a classical liberal who's a sangoma. You know, normally your traditional healers tend to take the Pan-Africanist route, because the Pan-Africanist route seems to be the one ideology that stands for that supports traditional healers and everything. But in reality, there's no ideology that's for traditional healers more than the classical liberal school of thought. It allows me to do my work, how I do it, wherever I do it, so long as I don't harm the next person. So really, it's a most open school of thought to traditional healers, if you were to ask me. And yeah, I am here today wearing this.
No, absolutely. I think it's great. I think, Sholin, just to finish off the show, I think one thing, as Tiego says, you know, it's about the individuals being able to practice, you know, their own spirituality, their own faith, their own religion. And I guess in part, you know, when we speak about why democracy is worth fighting for, why free societies, why freedom of speech is so important. I think, you know, just in what Tiego has just said now about practicing his faith, speaks directly to that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of my favorite things about like the liberal tradition, obviously in the classical sense, is that it allows you to have the ability to practice the faith you want, the religion you want, or the beliefs you want, despite what another person's opinion might be of it. You know what I mean? And with as long as you are not causing harm to another individual in their pursuit of attempting to practice their beliefs, you are free to do so. And that's what I find so beautiful, for the fact that somebody from my background, all the way from Cape Town on the Cape Flats, who's a Christian, Alex, who has Jewish heritage and, you know, is all the way from Gauteng, and Tiego, who is a traditional leader coming all the way from Limpopo, are still able to come around a table and have a common vision and view and perspective of the world. And we are so freely able to disagree with another in such a respectable way when it comes up. That is literally the beauty of classical liberalism. And I'm yet to see another ideological position allow that same type of freedom.
Absolutely. I think
I absolutely love what Sholin has said there, and I can't help but say that I think this reflects real diversity, right?
Yes.
Even the diversity is not a matter of skin color and whatnot alone. It's a whole lot of things: religion, language, culture, whatnot. And so classical liberalism embraces our differences, and we work like this, happily so, with our differences yet under one banner. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that's one thing we need to think about, you know, when you get diversity trainers going into corporate businesses to try and diversify companies, and you got to ask, what sort of diversity are they looking for? Is it diversity of thought, or is it what exactly is it that they seek? But I think that's a whole conversation for another day. But Jens, thank you so much. I think what Mbali has lined up for us could get a little heated. So without further ado, you guys, remember you can follow FAN at Badger of Liberty on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, as well as Instagram. And on that note, next up is Burning Questions with Mbali.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Hashtag Burning Questions, aka the Diversity Club, as you guys are saying. Jokes. Okay, guys. So today we are discussing a very interesting code card, and yeah, I'll just like to say you guys can be free. Say what you want to say. This is a free space. So, guys, our code card this week comes from Upumlani Majosi, and it reads: BEE must be scraped. We mustn't have more of it. That's if we are serious about fixing South Africa. Guys, I think this is very straightforward. I'm gonna go straight to the comments unless there's someone who wants to say something about this particular statement.
Well, I would say that I completely agree with what Pumlani says. Part of the problem that BEE has created is that we find many people in SOEs, in departments, and stuff of that nature, employees of departments, employees of SOEs, who were hired on the basis of their race as opposed to being hired on the basis of their merit. And as a result of that, the South African administration is failing. Now, in order for the South African administration to excel, we need to go back to a merit system whereby we prioritize people's merits, what they have to offer, their skills before anything else, and hire people based simply on that. But this thing of hiring people as a form of empowerment because previously we were disadvantaged and all of that, the intentions are understood, but the consequences, unfortunately, is that we have a failing administration, for the most part, because we have a lot of incompetent people hired on the basis of an empowerment program. And yeah, it's really causing many problems for us. So we have problems in politics, but we have even deeper problems at the administration level caused by BEE.
Yeah, definitely. With that said, let's go right straight into the first comment. This comment is from Ivon Daba, and he's very, let's go. One day we'll know who is using you, Pumlani Majosi, because it's clear that you're working for white monopoly. It can't be a black person who's taking out what is designed to uplift black people. Surely someone white is behind you. I think Mr. Ndava lost his plot a bit, but let's go. Sholin, you can go first.
Yeah, I have to say, one of the most racist things you could possibly say is that just because a black person does not think like you, they must, for some reason, be controlled by the boogeyman white man in the background. Because, I mean, Pumlani is by far one of the most brilliant thinkers in South African politics. Why he's not a politician, I don't understand. And maybe that's why he's such a brilliant thinker, actually. But yeah, he's really such a free thinker, and his ideas around BE and the free market economy is so it's so in depth that I feel like we should be listening more to the Pumlani Majosis of South Africa. And I feel like he breaks a barrier to say that, you know what, people believing that, you know what, you should have the freedom to earn the way you want, you should have the freedom to learn how and where you would like to. Just because people think that does not mean that they are controlled by whatever boogeyman you want to create behind the scenes. He is actually advocating for the freedom of people, and that should not be controversial, because it's like saying that just that not believing in freedom is some sort of controversial thing when it's such an essence of humans to want freedom. So I feel Mpumlani is absolutely correct with the fact that we should scrap BEE.
Yeah, and I think with what Ivor is saying, he's basically saying black people aren't actually allowed to have such ideas. Black people aren't allowed to have such thoughts, which is very dangerous. You know, I think people
And
like
that's
him are
and it's
those who
racist.
say it is, who say we're the clever blacks. The minute you start speaking about the
Mm.
economy, you start sharing your politics. It's like, oh, you are the clever black, Mr. Alex. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the one thing is, I mean, yeah, 100%. I think there's nothing more demeaning than the sort of clever blacks coconut argument. But my one comment, I have two comments. The one is judge a policy on its outcomes, not its intention. Has BE worked? No, cool. Get rid of it, replace it with something that works. If you want to uplift black people, grow the economy, don't do that with BEE. You do that with an economy that grows. You do that when people are in work. We have almost 50% of adults without a job.
Yeah.
That will uplift everybody as well as black people in the process. So yeah, that would be my 2 cents worth.
Yeah. Okay. And let us go to the second comment. This one is from Smooth David, and I don't really understand it. Maybe you guys can help me out. So it reads: so you want to tell me that we need to be equal to people who already have or have had the money while we have nothing. Uyanya. Uyanya is a very I'm not gonna translate. So the people he's talking about here, I would like to assume that he's talking about white people. I don't know if I'm correct. Tiego, I'll give this one to you. What do you think about Smooth's response to this code card?
Well, I think Sbu must stop being a lazy thinker. No, well, he first and foremost, he's making assumptions, right? He's assuming that by saying that we should scrap BE, we are then saying that there should be no form of empowerment. But that's not what's been said. So really, Sbu must stop being a lazy thinker. Start thinking critically about these matters. Understand that someone wouldn't just say such a thing. He must at least try and go read up on this person. Go and read up Pumlani's work, what his argument is, and yeah, he can't make such a judgment based just on a code. And I'm sorry for not. Yeah, I'm sorry for being all over the place, but really, I think these comments are quite insane, and they really point to people who are simply lazy to think and people who jump to conclusions without understanding what's being said first, and people who are more interested in dealing with someone's character over the content that's being put forward. I mean, Pumlani makes a suggestion or says that we must scrap away BEE so South Africa can move forward. Instead of engaging what Pumlani puts forward, they attack his character. I think it's nonsensical, and I think it's something that shouldn't be tolerated.
Yeah, definitely. Alex, I think you mentioned that if BEE obviously is not working, it must get scraped and we must replace it with something that will work. What do you think we should replace BEE with?
Yeah, so I think ultimately a program that doesn't use race as a criteria for empowerment. So the Institute of Race Relations have come up with a policy called EED, which stands for Empowerment of the Economically Disadvantaged. So that takes now if we talk about like what is Boo and Ivor want is to uplift people, then we need to uplift those who have less. And ultimately what you want to do is reduce poverty. And EED does that through empowering it. If, for example, B legislation says you must have X amount of people of a certain race, EED would say you need to have a certain amount of people whose household earns less than 20,000 Rand in a month or whatever it is. Those kind of things, those kind of incentives to businesses to really empower people, but still not taking away the idea of merit. You want to give people opportunities who then can take their families out of poverty.
Yeah, definitely. Sholin, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I just want to add a last point, which is that the insulting part I also find about the comments is that it has this assumption that all black people are poor, helpless, and waiting for a government handout. Like that is the most most insulting idea that these comments actually present. Because what we
Yeah.
actually see is that the policies like BE, although it sounds nice, named Black Economic Empowerment, what it actually only does is enrich a small, connected, politically connected elite who are, connected to the likes of the ANC leaders and those in government departments. That's what actually benefits. So if we
Yeah.
actually want to say who does B actually hurt the most, it's actually the truly disadvantaged, poor Black individuals that
Yeah.
actually unfortunately exist in South Africa due to government policy.
Yeah, no, definitely. I hope Mr. Ndava heard that. We are not uplifting any ordinary Black person.
Ali, can I just crash your vibe here? But I think the one thing is that what that can also lead to, like in the example Tiego has cited, you can apply the same diversity criteria to a position. Like when I applied for jobs leaving varsity, some jobs you just knew like there's no point applying for this. There's a very strong like transformation agenda here. Now the problem is that South Africa competes with the rest of the world, so I wouldn't be surprised if someone like Tiego's friend ends up in going working on a mine in Australia or somewhere else where they will take someone because he was the best, and that's everyone loses when you undermine merit. Everyone loses.
Yeah. That is true.
And the other thing, when the whole BE thing started, it benefited politicians, but most of the politicians that it benefited, if you look at them, really, it's people who, even during apartheid, yes, apartheid was bad, yes, apartheid discriminated against Black people, but the reality of the matter is that even during apartheid, Black people had different economic classes, right? Even during apartheid, you had Black people who were absolutely poor, Black people who were poor, Black people who were of the middle class, Black people who were of the upper class. Now, someone like Dr. Mampela Rampele, whose parents, the father was a principal, I think the mother was a teacher, if I remember correctly, from the books that I've read before. The mother was a teacher, the father was a principal. Now, yes, she's Black, but when the empowerment system came in, it empowered people such as Dr. Mampela Rampele first, whereas the whole intention of the thing was that it must first and foremost empower people in shacks, empower people in mud houses, empower people who still have to go to schools with pit toilets and everything. So from the very start of this policy, it has never, although its intentions are right, from the very start, it has never succeeded. It has empowered the wrong people, and that's why we are calling for it to be scrapped. And now we are calling for an empowerment system that focuses on class, that empowers people on the basis of class. We know that the poorest of the poor are the people we need to empower. Those are the people who are struggling the most. It's not their skin color that makes them poor. Skin color is not a proxy. Skin color is not a proxy for your economic standing, right? And that is the very argument we're making here, and that's why it makes me so upset for someone to come and throw shade at someone like Komani when they make such an argument and say that there's a white person standing behind them. No. These are issues that are in fact affecting the poorest of the poor, majority of whom happen to be Black. And those are the people that people like Pumlani, like myself, like Alex, like Sholen, like yourself are speaking for when we do want these policies to be scrapped.
Yeah, no, definitely. Preach, Mr. Tiego. I don't know whether you're still a Sangoma or you're a pastor. I don't know which one. The previous show, I heard that you're a bit of a, Anyway, guys, let's go to our last comment. And this one comes from Pet Heads, and it reads, and the majority of South Africans sees nothing wrong with it. People need to see life through the eyes of an economist, not this nonsense sung by ANC and EFF dumb cases with aspirations of socialist and communism. Finally, I think someone who speaks some sense. What are you guys' thoughts on this? Sholen, you can go first.
Yeah, I'll be short. I agree with Shibeko that, a majority of South Africans do not benefit from BE, unfortunately, as we've mentioned multiple times now. And I'm like, we really have to see that, the biggest beneficiaries are the ANC and EFF. There's a reason why they are so happy with keeping it in place and wanting it implemented, amended, and extended. Because eventually it takes them to a more socialist society in South Africa, where the state controls the economy and the state is supposedly the center of life, economic or social. And we know that that does not work. Throughout the world, we've had a lot of examples that free market economies with limited governments and we respect human rights, those are countries that thrive. But socialist and communist regimes continue to fall, and that's why we see that it does simply not work. Yeah, Mbali.
It honestly does not work. Alex, your last thoughts?
Yeah, my final thoughts are that, just in these three comments, I would assume that, like, going on the assumption that they are all people of color shows that you get diversity of thought. So why would you apply a policy to people when you're looking to empower people based on race? And the thing is that, as Sholin says, this Petetso does reference socialism, communism. The guy in the comment before said, "Oh, why are we looking for equality when people had an advantage?" We're not looking for equality. We're looking for opportunities, and that's what a free society enables people to do. So, yeah, I'm definitely side with that last comment. But I think this is the kind of thing. This kind of drills into what we were also discussing in Freedom Fanatics, is the idea of look at the symptoms and the causes. The causes is this ideology of socialism, of communism, that is at the heart of the NDR, which guides the governing party, the ANC. And so then these are kind of things that people need to be thinking about. But these are only possible when we have discussions and a free market of ideas to talk about these things and to push back, and as we have done, just what we think are bad ideas based on the merits of the argument.
Yeah, no, definitely. Mr. Tiego, final thoughts?
Ordinarily I would agree with the last comment that people need to start thinking like economists. But then I remembered that I studied economics at Rhodes, and one of the economics lecturers there is basically a socialist who's teaching every economics student socialism. His name is David Fryer. His PhD thesis was rejected, and he is now basically teaching that very thesis. It's really a Marxist thesis. That thing is he's teaching it as an economics module, something that was rejected. So I wouldn't advise the young to really listen to economists, but we must really start thinking thoroughly around policies. Whichever policy we like Alex has mentioned, what matters as far as policies are concerned would be the outcome of the policy over what the intentions of it are. So people should really start thinking about the outcomes of these policies, even though the intention of BE, for example, might have been good, which I suspect is not good. I'm beginning to have these suspicions. I'm beginning to be suspicious that actually the African National Congress, even when they were fighting apartheid, the fight was never to build a fair and a fair society, but for them to step into that place and be the ones who are benefiting from it. I'm becoming convinced that that is the case. But let's just say, for argument's sake, that the intention Vele was to empower people. The intention was good. The intentions were good and everything. Unfortunately, intentions don't give us policy outcomes. Policy outcomes come out of what's practical. We should start thinking about practical solutions to our problems and stop with this whole thing of wanting to sound clever, even in cases that we mustn't be sounding clever. Sure.
Hectic. Guys, I think we've come to the end of our show. Thank you so much, Alex, Diego, and Sholin. We'll catch you guys next week. Same time, same place. And goodbye.